Welcome to Past Paradise, where we revisit the stories of icons whose lives were marked by brilliance and heartache. Karen Carpenter, one half of the legendary sibling duo, the Carpenters, was a musical sensation who captured hearts with her warm voice and timeless hits. Yet behind the spotlight, Karen faced a darker struggle, one that would ultimately take her life far too soon. Battling with anorexia, an illness poorly understood in her time, Karen became trapped in a cycle of self-doubt and pain. Her fame couldn't shield her from the pressures of an image-obsessed world, nor from the complex relationship with those she loved most. Join us as we uncover Karen's rise to stardom, her battle with inner demons, and the tragic discovery of her lifeless body by her estranged mother, forever casting a shadow over her bright legacy. It began in the middle of the 20th century. She was born in New Haven, Connecticut on March 2, 1950. Harold Bertram Carpenter was her father, and Agnes Rower was her mother. Karen Ann Carpenter was her name when she was born. Missionaries had raised her father. He was born in China and went to boarding schools in England. At that time, it was normal for women to stay at home and raise children, while her father worked in printing. She had a brother named Richard who was 3 years older than her. From a very young age, Richard was very interested and very good at singing. At the piano, he was very good. It was clear that the Carpenters were born to make music. Richard was his mom's favorite child. Agnes also didn't hide it. Even though her parents were completely behind Richard's music career, they didn't know what to do when Karen started playing music better than her brother. They were afraid she would make him look bad. She loved to dance and took lessons in ballet and tap when she was younger. Her family moved to Downey, Los Angeles when she was 13 years old because her dad got a job there. Part of the reason for the move was to give Richard the best chance for a singing career. He had been playing at a pizza place in New Haven since he was 16 years old. She did things her own way. Carpenter made a friend named Frankie Chavez in Downey. Chavez would make her feel better and change her life. A glockenspiel, which is like a xylophone but has metal bars, was given to her when she joined the school band. Carpenter didn't connect with it. She wanted to play the drums instead, like Chavez, who had learned to play when she was young. In his youth, Carpenter looked up to Joe Morello and Ringo Starr as drummers. At the time, a Ludwig drum kit cost around $300. Aside from how much they cost, female drummers were almost never seen. But Chavez was the one who got Carpenter's parents to pay for the drums and showed her how to play. She quickly learned how to play complicated beats without even batting an eye. Her journey with music began in school. Carpenter's first band was with high school friends. 2+2 was the name of the three-girl band. Carpenter asked her brother to join them, so they broke up. It sounds like sexism. In 1965, the two Carpenter children and Richard's friend, Wes Jacobs, who played tuba and bass, started the Dick Carter Trio. Aside from playing jazz in bars, they were on Your All-American College Show. Richard said that his sister was very good at music and that she could move the sticks quickly as if she had been born in a drum factory. She wasn't singing at this point. She was fine with getting lost in her percussion show. Karen began to get attention from other people. The Carpenters were called to an interview with famous bassist Joe Osborne. Karen had only planned to play the drums, but she ended up singing and made everyone there take notice. Even though he didn't think Richard was very good, Osborne signed her to his label. Among the projects they worked on with Osborne is a song by Richard called Looking for Love. There are only about 500 copies of this song left in the world, and each one is worth $2,000. Karen finished in 1967, the same year that Jacobs quit working for the Carpenters to go to Juilliard to study music. Karen went to Long Beach State and joined the college chorus. The director helped her improve her 3-octave range and told her that pop music would work well with her voice. Going against the flow. The next project the two worked on together was Spectrum, a group with John Bettis, Leslie Johnston, Gary Sims, and Danny Woodhams. Their sound was based on using cutting-edge new techniques to combine singing and make duets. They were not at all like the hot, hard, and trippy rock acts at the time. Society puts a lot of emphasis on going against the rules. Bettis and Richard were hired to play banjo and piano at Disneyland. They were told to play certain songs from the early 1900s. But when the crowd asked them to play hot new songs, they were happy to play the music that makes people happy. It got them fired from Disneyland to sing songs like Yesterday and Light My Fire. Richard wrote a song to his old boss as a reaction, and he and Karen recorded it. They got a big break. The Carpenters signed with A&M Records in 1969. Karen played drums and sang, and Richard sang. She also played bass guitar on 2 tracks of their first album, which was originally called Offering, but was later changed to Ticket to Ride. This is also the name of the Beatles' cover song on the record that got them a lot of attention. Indeed, Paul McCartney himself said that Karen had the best female voice in the world after hearing her sing their song. The only problem was that Karen was so short that no one could see her when they played shows. She was only 5 feet 4 inches behind her big drum set. Being the center of attention. Most of the songs on the first record had Karen singing on them. People who came to see them perform wanted to see her face. So Richard and the band boss, Sherwin Bash, talked her into singing in front of everyone, and they hired Cubby O'Brien as the new drummer. At first, this was hard for Karen because she was used to feeling safe when no one could see her. Besides that, she was very good at playing the drums, and she was doing something that not many women had done before or since. She called herself a drummer who sang. After 1973, her singing skills were featured more on their records than her drums. She could make people laugh. Karen Carpenter's fame was both good and bad for her. She was shy, easily upset, and didn't want to be the center of attention on the one hand. On the other hand, she loved music and sharing their sound, and the positive feedback made her want to get more people to listen. She could laugh at herself and not worry too much about how she looked. It's funny because that's what killed her in the end. In 1974, a Japanese reporter told the wrong thing about her. They called her the lead sister instead of the lead singer. The nickname stuck, and Karen embraced it. She even had t-shirts made with the words lead sister on them, which she wore to a number of live shows. Where to find inspiration in the most odd places. Richard wasn't a snob, so he knew that anything could lead to a hit song. He could write catchy songs, and he was in charge of arranging and writing the music for the Carpenters' songs. We've Only Just Begun is one of their first songs that got a lot of attention, and it has a funny story behind how it came to be. Richard's sharp ears picked up a tune that caught his fancy while he was watching TV. The commercial was a song for a bank and showed a young couple getting married and starting their new life together. That same day, Richard called around and bought the song's rights. He and his sister then used the same idea to make their own full-length song. Each light makes a shadow. The song, We've Only Just Begun, is usually associated with happiness, hope, and positivity. But it has also been used as the background music for some very scary and famous horror scenes. These directors know how to use contrast to make a point. This song is so bright that it shows how dark things really are. The 2007 movie 1408 by Michael Hafstrom is an example. It was based on a short story by Stephen King, who is known as the master of horror. He plays the song at several important points in the movie. In The Mouth of Madness, 1994, a movie by John Carpenter that pays homage to the works of H.P. Lovecraft, is another great example. Lovecraft. In the movie, the happy song plays while the character is locked up in an institution. Cracks began to appear. The Carpenters were very popular in 1973. That's when they put out the record Now and Then. Their songs, Goodbye to Love, Yesterday Once More, and Top of the World, all made it to number 1 on the lists in 1972 and 1973. Karen was under a lot of stress, and it showed up in bad ways. She had always been aware of her height and began dieting in school to lose weight. She had been eating a diet high in protein, low in carbs, and low in fat ever since, which helped her keep her weight at 120 pounds. But in 1973, She saw a picture of herself acting and fell apart at the sight of how fat she looked. This started a series of events that ended with her death. The start of the end. Carpenter decided she needed to do something about what she saw as being overweight. She got a personal trainer who told her what to eat and how to work out. She started to build muscle, which was the opposite of what she wanted to see when she looked at herself. This is what happens when you try to get healthy and fit. She then fired the teacher and took charge of the situation herself. She began working out and seriously limiting the number of calories she ate. Unfortunately, this worked really well. Carpenter quickly lost 20 pounds and now wanted to lose 5 more. Her dangerous weight drop made her feel in charge, which pushed her to do more. She tried to hide how obsessed she was. When you're on the road, it's hard to eat, period. On top of that, it's tough to eat well. We don't like to eat before a show because I can't stand singing with a full stomach. You never get to dinner until like midnight, and if you eat heavy, you're not going to sleep, and you're going to be a balloon, Carpenter said. Her mother noticed her changes in behavior. Some did the same. When Carpenter ate with other people, she would cut up small portions of her food so that everyone could try them. She did this so that she would eat less in the end. At the time, she was still living with her parents, even though she was well known. Carpenter was mad that her mother would act like her and put her own food on Carpenter's plate. No going back on what has been seen. She lost 91 pounds by 1975. The crowd was annoyed when they showed up at live shows with Karen. Their fans began writing letters to say they were worried about how thin their favorite singer looked. The only thing she could think of to explain her amazing weight loss was that she was too tired from performing. Her folks didn't know what to do. In the same year, her boss saw that she was adding layers to her clothes to hide the fact that she was losing weight. She would start with a long-sleeved shirt and then put a blouse over that, and a sweater over that, and a jacket over that. With all of it, you had no idea of what she had become, Bash said. Getting away from Agnes. Karen didn't get along well with her mother at best. People who knew the Carpenters say that Agnes was a cold woman who didn't care much about her daughter. Karen had never had attention from Agnes before. Her mother only cared about Richard, so she liked it. One of the things that seems to drive young girls to overeat is that they were often the kids that never got attention, said Bash. She lived with her parents until 1974, when she decided to go out on her own. In 1976, when she was 26, she bought 2 apartments next to each other in Century City and turned them into one. The doorbell rang to the tune of "We've Only Just Begun." She heard the clock begin to strike 12. Being in a relationship and falling in love were not important to her when she was younger. She wasn't the type of girl to do anything halfway. She focused on her career, which meant she couldn't commit to a stable relationship, but she wouldn't have it any other way. "As long as we're on the road most of the time, I will never marry," she said in an interview. She also thought that meeting people was hard in her line of work, and she wasn't willing to do it just to avoid being alone. But as she got closer to 30, she started to feel lonely and wanted a family and friends. She put herself out there. When the Carpenters took a break from touring, Karen tried some normal social activities. She hung out with famous men like Mike Curb, a successful musician, record executive, and even tried his hand at politics. Tony Danza, the good-looking actor from Who's the Boss. Terry Ellis, Mark Harmon, Steve Martin, the award-winning comedian and musician, and Alan Osmond. All of them failed in some way. Things weren't going well with her career either. People were tired of hearing the same old songs, and bands like ABBA were more appealing to older people. By the mid-1970s, Richard became addicted to Quaalude, and the Carpenters had to cancel concerts. Karen decided to try her hand at a solo career, and after months of begging, Richard finally agreed. Her spirit was broken. Karen asked Phil Ramone to produce her solo album. Carpenter became very close with Ramone's wife, Itchy. Phil wanted Karen to play to an older audience with love songs that were less innocent. She stayed with the Ramones in New York during production and seemed happy. She looked healthy and ate. After recording a few songs, Carpenter flew back to L.A. to tell her family about her progress. In a groundbreaking biography published in 2023 called Lead Sister by Lucy O'Brien, it was revealed that when she returned to New York in 1979, she had lost 77 pounds. Ramone said she found laxatives all over his house, and she took more than 90 of them in one sitting. He thinks her parents didn't like the new, sexier direction she had gone in, which made her fall hard into anorexia and bulimia. The downward spiral got stronger. It got so bad for Carpenter that she couldn't travel, so Ramone had to go to LA to finish producing the album. When they finally played it for the A&M executives, it didn't go over well. Richard was the harshest critic, calling her songs weak and saying the key was too high for her vocal range. His lack of support broke her and caused a rift between them, but he still persuaded her to drop her solo album and work on a new Carpenter's album with him since he had finished the 6-week rehab program and was responding well to treatment. Their reunion album failed. She fell in love with a man. During a time when her work life was getting too hard, she met a real estate agent named Thomas James Burris. Most people who knew Carpenter thought he was nice. According to Itchy, Karen really thought he was going to be her knight in shining armor. She was desperate for stability and for something to go right in her life. Carol Kerb said, "He was very attractive, very nice, and he seemed very generous." When Burris proposed after only 2 months, Carpenter gave up all sense and said yes. Their plans were to be engaged for a year, but in July 1980, they announced they would be getting married the next month. She didn't want to go to the wedding. There was a 9-year age gap between Burris and Carpenter, who was 30 years old. He had been married and divorced and had an 18-year-old son. Carpenter was just days away from the wedding rehearsal when she got the news that broke her heart. Burris had no plans to have any more children. He had a vasectomy several years ago and wasn't willing to have it reversed. This wasn't at all what Carpenter signed up for. She wanted to be a mother, and Burris knew that when he asked her to marry him. That day, there was no motherly love. Carpenter should have known better, but when her life was turned upside down, she went to her mother for help. When she told Agnes what had happened and why she had decided to cancel the wedding, she expected to hear words of support and encouragement, but instead, she heard scolding. Agnes told her daughter that the wedding was still going to happen. The invitations have been sent out. There are going to be writers and photographers. There will be a People magazine there. You are going to walk down the aisle at the wedding. Karen, you made your bed, Agnes told her. Now you have to lay in it. It was doomed from the start. Carpenter should not have listened to her stupid mother, but she did. On August 31st, 1980, she married Burris. It was clear right away that Burris didn't have any money and even less sense of how it should be spent. Evelyn Wallace said he'd ask for $35,000 and $50,000 at a time. Eventually, all she had left was stocks and bonds. He couldn't even pay for her wedding ring. He didn't care about her much and had a bad anger that scarred her. That was the last blow for Itchy. She says it was the worst thing that could have ever happened to her. They were married for 14 months, and Carpenter filed for divorce before the end of 1981. She was put in her place. She went back to work as soon as she realized she couldn't save her marriage. The Carpenters then went on a tour of Europe and South America. Back in October 1981, they did an interview with BBC's Nationwide while they were in London. Sue Lawley, the host, didn't hold back during the interview, so things got heated quickly. There were rumors that you were suffering from the Slimmer's disease, anorexia nervosa. Is that right? Lawley asked Karen. Her answer, no, showed that she was annoyed. I was just pooped. I was tired out. Lawley didn't stop asking. Lawley asked Richard if they could talk about his sister's weight, but Richard told her they weren't. She said, I am just asking you the questions people want to know the answers to. She chose to get help. Carpenter hit rock bottom when her solo record, comeback project, and marriage all failed over the course of 3 years. She then chose to get help for her eating problem. She didn't want to take her time getting better. She wanted to get better fast. The therapist she saw was Stephen Levenkron, who has an office in New York. Self-mutilation and obesity are two areas of study that he had studied in depth. Even though it was a brand new illness that not many people knew much about at the time, Levenkron wasn't even an MD. In addition to taking up to 90 laxatives at night, she told him she was also taking medicine for her thyroid to speed up her metabolism. The treatment wasn't working. Even though Levenkron took her pills away, it wasn't enough. He thought that the patient needed to be totally reliant on him in order to start acting better again. It's a lot like how people are treated for anorexia today. The patient must not have any illusions of control. This is why they must be brought to a center where their behavior is watched, and they can't switch to a different way when one fails. Carpenter started walking the 2 miles to her doctor appointments as a way to burn extra calories. Levenkron asked the Carpenter family to a 90-minute meeting in New York in a last-ditch effort to get through to her. They finally agreed after being pushed and pushed. She was broken after family therapy. When it came to therapy and mental health, the Carpenter family was not at all forward-thinking. Agnes thought that her daughter was just being stubborn and that it didn't matter that strangers were involved. She should just eat. During the lesson, Karen broke down in tears and told her family she was sorry for ruining their lives. Levenkron told them, "I think Karen needs to hear that you love her." Richard told Karen right away that he loved her. When Levenkron asked, "Agnes?" "That's not right," her mother told him, adding that she should be called Mrs. Carpenter instead. They didn't talk to each other after the lesson because Richard told her that the treatment plan wasn't working. Being in the hospital helped a little. In September 1982, Carpenter called Levenkron to report some worrying signs. She was feeling dizzy and her heart was racing. He got her admitted right away because she was severely dehydrated. She gained 12 pounds in just a few days after being fed through an IV. Carpenter began eating 3 times a day and seemed happy with the result. By November, she had put on 30 pounds and chose to go home even though Levenkron told her not to. Her family and friends were all worried that she was leaving treatment too soon. But when she came back, she seemed to have her hunger and desire for life back. She loved eating her favorite food with her family and friends on Thanksgiving without any reservations. She passed away at 32 years old. It looked like things were getting better, but it was all a trick. She was looking forward to singing again, getting divorced, and getting her nails done. But she would never show up for her appointment. She slept when she wasn't out making friends. Karen went downstairs on February 4th, 1982, to heat up the coffee, and then went upstairs to get ready. She was dead when her mother found her at the closet door. When Carpenter's autopsy was made public a year later, it showed upsetting facts about how she died. It said that she died because of emitting cardiotoxicity from anorexia nervosa. At the time of her death, her blood sugar level was 1,110 milligrams, which is more than 10 times the normal amount. It was also found out that she had been using ipecac syrup, a drug that makes you throw up. She thought it would help her lose weight, but unfortunately, it made her heart weaker.
If you've watched the video till here, that means you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notifications bell icon